we'll give Ms. Johnson another minute or two to come back and inform us. And then I think we'll go ahead and start the meeting and have the chair join us when she can.
Director Geisinger, she's still getting set up at the moment. She's just getting her link back. Are you able to start the meeting?
I am. John, can you pull the agenda back down? It's gone up to like a page 3 or something. Please. Thank you. All right. I am calling this meeting to order. I'm Lynn Geisinger. I'm the first vice chair. It is about 18 minutes until 6. We apologize for the delay. The chair is having troubles with her internet or getting online or something. So this is a remote meeting of the Board of Directors on Tuesday, February 23, 2021. We will dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance since we're virtual at this point. I don't have a safety moment set up, but I think our safety moment continues to be careful and wear your masks. Now they say that 2 masks provide more protection, and let's get our vaccines. When your number comes up, when you're entitled, it's very important that we get our vaccines and encourage other people around us to do it. Ms. McManus or Mr. McKay,
Vice Chair Geisinger, will you commence with the meeting, please?
I have started. Thank you. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. I was just finishing a very brief safety moment and asking Ms. McManus or Mr. McKay to do the roll, please.
Thank you. This is Barbara McManus. Director Bouquet.
Present.
Director Broom. Director Busick.
Here.
Director Catlin.
Present.
Director Cook.
Here.
Director Davidson.
Present.
Director Deschelle.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Present.
Director Rosenthal.
Present.
Director Sloan.
Here.
Director Tisdale.
Present.
Director Whitmore.
Present.
Director Williams.
Good evening, I'm here. I would like everybody to know that you can unmute yourself by pushing Alt-A, if that helps anybody who gets stuck.
Vice Chair Geisinger.
I'm here.
Okay, I show 13 present, 2 absent with 1 pending. Thank you.
And I thought I saw Bob Broom, so.
Director Broom is here.
Okay.
Maybe he's having trouble unmuting or something, but it sounds like he's here. And then the chair, I think, is pending, right?
Yes.
Retiree awards, we have none tonight. So we're at public participation. Public participation, I don't know, do we have, well, I'll talk the part that I know without having anything in front of me, which is that it's 3 minutes. And we typically don't respond. It's a chance for the public to come in and speak to us. Do we have people signed up, Ms. McManus or Mr. McKay?
Director Geisinger, this is John McKay. For tonight's public participation, we'll ask anyone who wants to speak to the board to raise their virtual hands if they're logged into the meeting, or if they're dialed into the meeting, they can also hit *9. And once the staff unmutes that person can toggle the mute settings on his or her phone by hitting *6. So
Great.
for those folks who are sure thing. For those folks who are, thank you. For those folks who are logged into the meeting, to get yourself into the queue for public participation, you'll want to hit the raise hand button on your screen for those folks who are logged in. For anyone who's dialed into the meeting, you'll want to hit *9. At the appropriate time, you'll want to toggle your mute settings by hitting *6.
Great. Do we have anyone who has raised their virtual hand or is indicating that they would like to speak? Who can help me with that answer? Is that you, Mr. McKay? Is it, do we have anyone that's raised their hand or has indicated they would like to speak?
I do not see anyone in the queue.
Okay. Give it just a few more seconds. Okay, I am taking a look. I apologize. I'm pulling up the information, but the agenda has disappeared. So is it, can you help me, Mr. McKay? There we go. You can bring it down. Great. Committee reports. Have the committee reports. Do we have any comment or question or concern about the committee reports? No. Do we have a motion to approve the committee reports?
So moved, Director Williams.
Director Williams, in a second.
Second, Director Bouquet.
Second.
Second, Director Bouquet. All right. Now I'll ask again. Do we have any comment or discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Great. General Manager Oversight and Performance Management Update. Is that Mr. Director Busick?
It is, Madam Chair. Thank you. Nothing to report. There are 2 items on the consent agenda that came out of the GMOC at the last meeting, and our next meeting is next week, March 4th, 3 p.m. And I want to thank all the members and participants of the GMOC for all of their hard work. Thank you.
Okay. I don't yet have the script, so let's see, we are at approval of board meeting minutes from our January 26th, I think it says 2021 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
Move to approve the board meeting minutes.
Director Tisdale has made the motion. Do we have a second?
Busick, second.
Busick, second. Any comment? All right. Any objection to approving the board meeting minutes? All right, so approved. Chair's report. I guess we will skip that for now. Angie's still, our chair is still working to get on. How about our general manager's report?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good evening to you and board members and to all who are virtually assembled. I'm Deborah Johnson, the General Manager and CEO of the Regional Transportation District. My brief report is outlined within my transitional plan priorities of exercising organizational stewardship and financial responsibility, engaging employees and optimizing service delivery, and engaging stakeholders and building partnerships. Within the auspices of my organizational stewardship priorities, since January 11th, the day in which RTD received notice of its Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act of 2021, known as CRRSA, the apportionment of $203 million, my top priority has been to restore the agency's workforce. Since my last report to this body on January 26, recall notices have been sent to 152 part-time employees. Those are bus operators. Of those notices sent, 99 individuals have responded. As of February 19th, 74 part-time bus operators have been retrained and re-entered into revenue service. There are 25 individuals currently scheduled for either a drug screen or training. As of February 19th, 14 individuals had notified the agency that they would not be returning. The 15-day recall period ended on Saturday, February 20th. As part of the agency's revenue service delivery roll-up, which I spoke with you about previously, approximately 60 positions that remained unfilled due to previous vacancies will be filled, ranging from certified mechanics to dispatchers and other positions in between associated with revenue service delivery. RTD is still awaiting specific guidance from the Federal Transit Administration regarding the requirements and allowable expenditures necessary to draw the $203 million that have been apportioned to us under CRISA. As part of the agency's recently enhanced efforts to foster community and stakeholder engagement listening sessions have been underway for the past several weeks. During the week of January 25th, staff met with representatives to hear about their needs relative to service delivery from the Denver Public Schools. During the week of February 8th, meetings included listening sessions with the Boulder Local Coordinating Council and Mobility for All. During the week of February 15th, listening sessions were had with the Denver Local Coordinating Council, the RTD Citizens Advisory Committee, and the Regional TMA meeting held through Dr. Cog. And there were specific geographic sector stakeholder listening sessions within Boulder County, the Northwest geographic sector, as well as the Northeast. Rounding out these sessions this week, there will be geographic sector stakeholder listening sessions in both the Southwest and the Southeast geographic sectors. In addition to the aforementioned, I have actively engaged in nearly 50 meetings, participated in media interviews, and served on panels. I will reference a few. Meetings with some of RTD's congressional delegation and their respective staffs, meetings I've held with the vice chair of the House Transportation Committee and the chair of the Senate Transportation Committee here at the state level in Colorado, other state legislators. I served as a panelist with the Transit Center in a session entitled New CEOs Take the Helm, participated in a few meetings with APTA as it pertains to the peer reviews in which RTD has underway, specifically addressing our internal auditing function as well as safety and security. Additionally, I met with leadership from the Southwest Transit Association and participated in a ride along on the N line with a commuter rail supervisor. In addition to that, I engaged with employees in the capital programs and bus operations departments through departmental meetings held there. As we as an agency look to RTD's road to recovery, a session will be held on March 9th with this body. The intent is to garner input from the board on developing a ridership growth action plan as we expand our planning and manage expectations around our transit service delivery model. In a nutshell, it's how do we reshape RTD 2.0? So I encourage you to come forward with your ideas as we collectively discuss our customers' pain points, define the problems we are trying to solve, and then ideate. Staff can take those ideas and concepts, et cetera, and flesh them out to chart the agency's road to recovery and bring those back to the board with options and recommendations. That completes my report, Madam Chair. Thank you very kindly for the opportunity.
Director Geisinger, Director Deschel has his hand up.
And you are muted, Director Geisinger.
I was asking for questions or comments, so Director Deschel.
Thank you, Director Geisinger, and thank you, General Manager and CEO Johnson. I have a question about our peer review, which I am very much in favor of, but I'm curious if we have any information on how well our peer reviewers are doing their job as it pertains to audit. Because the strength of a peer review is only going to be based on how well those individuals do that function which they're reviewing.
Thank you very much, Director Deschel, for the questions you posed. Recognizing that one of the individuals that leading the peer review is she leads the charge at the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority and chairs the audit review committee for the American Public Transportation Association in her stead. Additionally, the other participants revolve around New York Metro. transit agency. I don't have that information readily available, but I can share that the entities of which we are looking at do have best practices that the industry looks to. They all adhere to the guidelines specified with the entity that oversees the International Association of Auditors, or whatever the appropriate nomenclature is. So recognizing when we put forward this recommendation to the American Public Transportation Association, there was certain eligibility criteria that which needed to be met in order for them to actually have the authority to review our internal auditing functions. So with that as a backdrop, I'd be remiss not to mention as well that the individual who serves as the Chief Financial Officer for APTA actually comes from the space where he served as an auditor in a public municipality and is highly revered in that space. So with that information as a backdrop, that's how we went about developing the panelists and had an opportunity to engage with them and ask them active questions before we undertook this endeavor. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing anything unless someone else is. All right, we are at the unanimous consent portion of the agenda. There are 4 items on the unanimous consent agenda listed under item 11 as actions A through D. Approval of 15L route improvements change order. The second one is equitable transit-oriented development, or TOD policy. The third is 2021 General Manager Oversight and Performance Management Committee Charter, the GMOC Charter. And fourth, the first amendments to CEO General Manager Employment Agreement. If anyone has a change to or questions on any one of these items, please feel free to advise the chair at this time, and we will, of course, be happy to pull it from the unanimous consent agenda for consideration under recommended action.
Move approval, Director Broom.
Director Broom has moved approval of the unanimous
Second, Whitmore.
Second from Whitmore. No one wanting to pull any of these actions off the unanimous consent agenda? Great. Any comments, any concerns, any discussion? Not seeing any.
Madam Chair, this is Director Deschel.
Yes, Director Deschel.
I just want to make sure, and this might be my newness to the board, that resolution number is going to get numbered for the record prior to being sealed, or whatever the proper nomenclature is. Seeing a lot of yes, so I'll withdraw my question.
Okay, I was just looking to see. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the unanimous consent agenda. Director Broom and Director Tisdale. Any and no discussion. So all in favor of the unanimous consent agenda, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay.
Director Geisinger, I think it would be better if you asked for folks to raise their hand.
Okay. Could everyone in favor please raise your hand to be counted?
Or their virtual hand.
No. Can we just raise our regular hand?
Yeah.
All right. Raise your virtual. Ms. McManus, will you just let me know when that's all counted? And
Let it be noted for the record that technology proficiency was not part of the criteria for running for this position.
are we set, Ms. McManus?
Well, I am seeing 9 hands, and the folks that are on the phone, you'll have to ask verbally.
Okay, let's see who is on the phone. I think Bob Broom, are you, what is your vote on this?
I'm a yes.
Okay, is Chair Rivera Malpietti on at this point? Let's see. She just texted me she can't get on.
I'm a yes, but I can only do audio.
Okay, great. Is there someone else that's on the phone? Let's see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4. I count 12 here, and the chair and Director Broom. Is there anyone missing, Ms. McManus?
I only am seeing 12. I'm only seeing that same amount as well. I'm sorry that I am not able to see all of this.
I take it back. I count 13 on
1, 2,
the Zoom.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
So I think
8,
that we have a unanimous vote.
we have, yeah, one just popped in.
Okay, great.
So we have unanimous consent.
All right, should I read the language? They're here on my, after the vote, they're here on my list. Should I read the language of the 4?
Well, they're already approved.
Okay. All right. Let's see, recommended action. All of our recommended actions were addressed under the unanimous consent agenda. So there are no recommended actions. There is no executive session scheduled for this evening. So we are at old business, and the item listed here for old business is Reimagine Guiding Principles. We have one item listed under old business regarding Reimagine RTD, and I'll ask CEO and General Manager Deborah Johnson to open that discussion, please.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Chair. Before you, as you indicated, pursuant to what's outlined on the agenda, we will be revisiting Reimagine RTD. Introducing that topic, it'll be a multi-pronged approach being handled by Bill Van Meter, who serves as our Assistant General Manager of Planning. And additionally, we have Holly Buck, who is part of our consulting team, and I will be rounding out the discussion, speaking more specifically to the guiding principles and the need for such. So with that, I will yield the floor to Bill Van Meter to kick us off. Bill?
Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager Johnson. Good setup and segue. As General Manager Johnson identified, I will be doing a tag team approach to an update on the guiding principles. Holly Buck, who is the project manager for Reimagine RTD with FHU, will kick things off. The focus here is on guiding principles for Reimagine RTD. We're revisiting those, looking to have a good solid discussion with you today, and then with the intent of bringing them back to you for action and adoption in the April timeframe. We'll get into more of those details through this presentation, but we want to ground you on where we are on Reimagine RTD, both the comprehensive assessment of services, system optimization plan, as well as the phase we're really moving into now, setting the framework for the mobility plan for the future. So we have a brief presentation. It'll be tag team, and then we're open for your discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Holly and attempt to share the screen all at the same time. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. Can someone enable my screen sharing? Bill Van Meter, AGM of Planning. Trying to navigate technology and speak intelligently is, you know, a challenge for me.
Director Geisinger, this is John McKay on the line. I can share my screen here, Bill, if you could just tell me when you want to advance.
Okay, that would be great. And we're going to have Holly Buck kick this off. So again, Holly Buck, project manager with FHU on the consultant team. Holly.
Great, thank you so much, Bill. Holly Buck, FHU project manager. Our goal today, I think Bill covered it really well. Our goal today is to review the new and updated set of guiding principles that we've developed for Reimagine RTD and give you a bit of background on how they were developed. But before we launch into those, we just want to make sure that everybody has the same background on where we are with Reimagine RTD. I know we have some new board members, and we also have not talked about it in a while. So I thought maybe just a bit of background to get us all on the same page. So if we want to go to the next slide, that would be great. So the Reimagine process is really a 2-year process that answers what's next for RTD. And of course, we've been paused for a while, so end to end, it'll be a bit longer than 2 years to account for that pause. But the first year of Reimagine going on, we focused on developing a system optimization plan. And this was really, we started with a detailed evaluation of all the services that you provide today. We got input from stakeholders on what's working well and what isn't. And ultimately, we made a set of recommendations or a system optimization plan for a modified structure that increased ridership and productivity in a fiscally constrained environment. That was completed at the middle of last year, just before the project went on hold as a result of COVID-19. But there were some incremental steps for the implementation of the SOP that took place in January as part of your 2021 January run board. This second phase of Reimagine RTD that we're just getting started with is the creation of a long-term vision. And we call that, it's called the Mobility Plan for the Future. It really addresses the region's future mobility need and helps to define what RTD's role in regional mobility is and what that will look like. The vision is expected to leverage your current investments, what you've already put on the ground today, which has been a lot of great stuff, and build on the technology advancements that we're seeing in our transportation industry. It's a pretty exciting time to be in transportation. There's a lot of stuff going on. So how can we leverage some of that technology moving forward for RTD to support that mobility throughout the region? And then ultimately, the mobility plan for the future is intended to ensure that RTD remains competitive and relevant for the next generation of riders and into the future. So there's a lot of pieces and parts that fall under those two sections of Reimagine RTD. And this graphic just tries to simplify some of those big overarching topics that are touched upon in each of those two segments of Reimagine RTD. The first one, the light blue bubbles, talk about all the things that we reviewed and evaluated as part of that system optimization plan over the last year. The dark blue bubbles talk about all the pieces that we will be evaluating as part of the mobility plan for the future. And then the gray bubbles are initiatives that are happening outside of the Reimagine scope of work, but certainly have an influence on that scope of work. So we keep an eye on those as well. Bill?
And this is for me, Bill Van Meter, AGM Planning. In August of 2020, the board of directors had discussions with staff regarding the timing and the future of Reimagine RTD and expressed some concerns about proceeding forward at that time in consultation with then GM Ballard and with the board of directors. We made the decision to pause Reimagine RTD in August through early this year. And there were a number of reasons that influenced that decision. They're listed on this slide for your edification. It is now early January 2021. Next slide, please. And so we are in the restart phase for Reimagine RTD, as we informed the board earlier this month in a memo from GM Johnson, or through GM Johnson to you. We feel it's an opportune time for the board and the new GM to give direction on their future visions for RTD. We've also had the opportunity to have a better understanding of monitoring and our response to COVID impacts. And we feel it's important as well, if there is additional federal infrastructure or other funding, to make sure that we have our plans and priorities well understood in order to jump on those potential opportunities. Next slide, please. Holly discussed the system optimization plan and how we used the information to inform the January 2021 run board and made significant progress on that. Going forward, we are planning on developing a phased implementation report through the course of this year. It will be looking at peer agencies' response to COVID and their plans for the restoration of service post-COVID. And our intent is working closely with service planning, service development, to develop metrics and milestones that will help inform the board and staff on decisions around reinstating services that have been impacted by COVID, so that we have a good understanding of how to reinstate services moving forward, looking at financial revenue impacts, performance and ridership, as well as economic and employment trends and responses in the district. So the SOP will be moving forward, although our focus is turning more towards the mobility plan for the future. Next slide, please. Holly.
Great, thank you. Holly Buck, Felsberg Hope Moving. So what are our guiding principles? This slide really tries to just break down what they are and what we're trying to accomplish with them. Really, they're value statements that guide decision-making. They guide decision-making on the types of service you provide, where you provide it, who you provide it to, how you provide it. Doesn't dictate exact, no dictating here, but overarching values and guiding principles on what that might look like. And these really will set the framework for the mobility plan for the future. So when completed, the mobility plan for the future becomes an all-encompassing set of policies and partnerships, capital investments, operating enhancements that respond to these guiding principles that we're going to talk about today. And then if we want to go to the next slide, we put together a fairly simplistic, I'll just caution you that the examples we put together are truly just examples, and they're very simplistic. If we want to go to the next slide, we can look at the example. There we go, thank you. So this helps us understand how these guiding principles inform objectives and strategies. So we can see that in the guiding principles column, going through example 1, our objective here is to increase access to transportation to those in need. This would have a guiding principle, probably touch on guiding principles of equity and mobility. Strategies, one of the strategies, there could be several strategies that come forward to help support this, but one of them could be upgrading all your stops and stations to meet ADA requirements. The time frame for this, because there are thousands of stops, is we've identified a long-term time frame, and the responsibility here would come to RTD, of course, working with your cities and counties, your partner agencies, to try and get that implemented over that time frame. So while this is a simplistic example, it does provide you a framework of how all of these pieces and parts come together. And then if we want to go to the next slide. This is a quick review. So for those of you who have been on the board, if this is, if you're not new to the board, you'll recognize this as being an activity that was put together at the beginning of Reimagine RTD when we started the system optimization plan. And at the outset of that, staff developed a broad set of guiding principles that were brought to the board. We asked the board to identify the top 5 priorities to help guide Reimagine RTD. And you can, these are the survey results that came through that activity. And you can see that fiscal responsibility lands right at the top. And this is even before COVID. So, this was something that we were focused on even then. System sustainability is the next one. There's a lot of overlap here because we're talking about maintenance of your fleet and facility and your state of good repair. So those two go together, and you can see that the next four are all pretty closely right behind that second one, which is system sustainability. We used this information and we sought more feedback from the technical working group and the advisory committee that we worked with over the last year of Reimagine RTD during the SOP. We came to the board several times, and we also got input from the public, both riders and non-riders, all of that to help inform the guiding principles that General Manager Johnson is going to step us through now.
So thank you very much, Ms. Buck. As indicated with the outset of the comments, framing what we're discussing here today, the imperative aspect to any comprehensive operations analysis, of which Reimagine RTD is, are the guiding principles. Because for all intents and purposes, the guiding principles serve as the foundation upon which decisions are made relative to mobility options, service delivery. So with that as a backdrop, we're looking at this as a five-pronged approach, and you can clearly see them illustrated on the slide before you. We talk about mobility, we talk about equity, we talk about financial partnerships, workforce, and sustainability. Those are the five principles. So when we talk about mobility, when we are looking to make informed decisions, we need to do a temperature check and say, is this mobility option really enhancing the quality of our life for our residents, our customer, and visitors within our vast service area? Then stepping forward, looking at equity, which is paramount and should be paramount to all we do. Are we looking through the lens to say, is this mobility option really and truly removing barriers to ensure that customers have the freedom to get where they need to go when they need to get there? And then when you talk about our finances, when we think about the responsibility that we have as being public stewards, we need to ensure when we are making decisions that we are focused upon how we are leveraging our resources and maximizing costs for the betterment of efficiencies and optimization, I would qualify it as. And then as we look to being real partners, and when I say real partners, I emphasize that because when we look at transportation, as we clearly know, there can be intersectionality, there can be complementary systems, there could be other avenues in which we can leverage to broaden our reach of moving people to and fro. So in doing such, we need to ensure that we are identifying innovative opportunities to enhance mobility throughout the region. And keeping in mind that we are people in the people business, and this agency is made up of people. You as the board, us as staff, but we cannot do the jobs that we respectively have without leveraging the most important asset, which is the human aspect. And so we need to ensure throughout this process that we are leveraging our diverse workforce and ensuring that we're promoting engagement and innovation as we move forward. And then last but certainly not least, rounding out this five-pronged approach is sustainability. We want to ensure that we are reducing the carbon footprint. We want to ensure that we are leaving a transportation network that could be viable for futures to come, for future generations to come. And basically, what does that mean for all of us? Because even if people aren't utilizing our transportation system, what are we doing holistically as an agency that's benefiting the greater region in which we are moving people? So summing that up, the guiding principles are the basic foundation upon which we will use as we go through this comprehensive operation analysis, as we look at the system optimization plan and make informed decisions. Next slide. I'll yield the floor back to Mr. Van Meter to round us out.
Thank you. So I gave a sneak preview during my introductory remarks as to the next steps regarding guiding principles. So we are presenting this to you tonight, would be willing to and happy to engage in a discussion and hear any of your thoughts or feedback. In early March, we will have the intent of continuing to receive your input. We will be presenting a similar, making a similar presentation and presenting the same guiding principles to both the technical working group and the advisory committee in their first set of meetings during this Reimagine Restart on March 10th and 11th. Our intent is to then take the input that we receive from the board tonight through early March, and from the technical working group and advisory committee, make any changes if necessary, incorporate your thoughts and comments, and bring it back to the board's planning, capital programs, and fast tracks committee in April for committee consideration and then for adoption later that month. So that's our proposed timeline and schedule moving forward. At this point, I would, Madam Chair, I would welcome any questions, discussion, or dialogue.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. It's nice to have you back, Ms. Buck. And nice to see this launching again. I think I will run through the list of directors for comment rather than just taking hands. Director Bouquet, do you have any questions or comment?
Not at this time. I do appreciate the presentation, though. Thank you very much.
Director Broom.
Not at this time.
Director Busick.
No, Madam Chair, thanks.
Director Catlin.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the update and the refresh. Looking forward to seeing where we go from here.
Second Vice Chair Cook.
Thank you. Just a couple quick things. First, General Manager Johnson, I'm really glad to see you're engaged on this so directly. That's great. And secondly, you mentioned in the memo and in the presentation that we're restarting it with new dynamics facing the agency. What are you doing? What actions are you taking to get arms around changes resulting from the pandemic and workforce issues and so forth? I'm talking about commuter patterns and so forth. Can you just give us a thumbnail, Holly or whoever, about what you're doing to incorporate that?
I'll go ahead and start. Holly Buck, FHU. As far as work patterns, one of the things that we're doing, we're working with RTD's travel demand modeling group. We're also working with Dr. Cog. And we're doing what we refer to as the bookends, where we are trying to look at some scenarios to help us understand what travel may look like in the future. We know what it looks like if we go back to what it was, right? We have a good sense of that. What if we don't go back to what it was? What if we go back to, say, a hybrid where we go to work 2 days a week? What if we go back to work 2 days a week, but we don't travel on those same 9 to 5 schedule? So we'll get a sense from that effort, the span. And so while we don't have a crystal ball to say this is exactly what's going to happen, we're going to give you as much information as we can to try and make good, educated assessment about what the span might look like for RTD and how we make good decisions moving forward, understanding that.
Thank you. And you're welcoming additional comments via writing. Is that correct, Bill Van Meter?
Bill Van Meter, AGM Planning, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Davidson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I just would say that I did notice and appreciate that in the updated guiding principles, the word customer does appear a number of times. I was surprised to see in the customer experience was previously a little lower on the list, and I would just remind us all that throughout this pandemic, we have a number of loyal customers who should be celebrated and continue to benefit well into the future with this system. So sometimes it's the small wins, it's maintaining our system, it's looking towards how we sustain this in the long haul. And I just would encourage everybody as we comment to bear in mind that customers are at the center here. Other than that, I would just say thank you. I look forward to participating in the next steps. Really appreciate that we're restarting this important process.
Madam Chair, if I may
Yes, ma'am.
respond to Director Davidson, thank you very much for your comments. It's really important to me. I know oftentimes in this space, people refer to individuals as riders. I personally prefer customers because they're paying for a service and we should treat them as such. And so my comments are intentional. And as I worked with the team, it's very important that we leverage that aspect, because regardless of what one's paying or what they can't afford, we should ensure that we are providing the highest level of customer service because we want their satisfaction, and that will take us further when we look at them to promote our system for the betterment of others. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Anything else, Director Davidson? No.
No, thank you.
Director DeShell.
Thank you. Nothing for me. Thanks everyone for the great report.
Director Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two comments. The first is package page 85. It talks about regarding supporting social equity populations. And I just want to be sure that as we are moving into this process that we define equity, because we still haven't had the opportunity to do that. And I know, Ms. Buck, you know very well that that's important to me, as well as General Manager Johnson. So that's probably not a surprising comment. And the second comment that I have is just an opportunity to involve the CAC. The CAC and the other groups that we have that meet pretty regularly, I just think they have such a wealth of information, and there might be an opportunity for us to tap into that, their expertise and their time and their talent in a way that might be meaningful for the agency.
Director Lewis, if I may, the team can attest, I had a conversation revolving around that because I think it's incumbent upon us to engage our, Citizen Advisory Committee and leverage other customers from their perspectives, as opposed to just, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful fashion, but I want to hear from individuals that are actually utilizing the system so we understand, getting back to the point that I've raised before, what their pain points are, as opposed to hearing it in a filter type way about, I heard that this person had this experience anecdotally, because it's often filtered by the time it gets to us. So I appreciate that comment, and please know that's our intent going forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's all I have.
Great. Thank you. Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and GM Johnson and team. To echo quite a bit of what Director Lewis said, and I look forward to having that discussion over equity, and I was pleased to see that in one of the guiding principles. Also glad to see the mobility piece, and that I look forward to having that discussion on ensuring that RTD fits into that total package of how people are going to get around, and how they're going to access RTD by foot and getting there by bicycle and scooter and car and other methods. So I look forward to that all being very inclusive, and I look forward to hearing from staff as well. So thank you, and good job everybody on putting together a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sloan.
Yes, thank you all. Already a good discussion, and I look forward to the more in-depth talks later. Thank you.
Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Teeing off of some of what Director Lewis said and what Director Rosenthal amplified on, I was struck in looking at the packet that page 84 of the packet really seemed to me to present a false choice. It pitted mobility and ADA and equity issues on the one hand against an example that was mobility, financial, and partnerships. And I was troubled when I saw that, but then I saw that on page 86, there was a marrying of all of that, where mobility, equity, financial, partnerships were then also married with workforce and sustainability. And it seems to me that that presentation at page 86 did a better job at providing 6 filters through which anything that we propose should pass. So that was comforting to me, because as I say, it seemed in the first instance to separate and to pit against each other some important issues. May I ask, and maybe Ms. Buck at FHU can tell me whether I did in fact capture that correctly.
Holly Buck, FHU, and I'm not sure which. I think one is the example, and one is and then 86 was the actual guiding principles themselves. Is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah, they definitely were not intended to be pitted against each other, just examples of strategies that may come out of the process. So they are intended, I think you hit it right on the head, where the guiding principles are intended to be a lens for which decisions are evaluated. So I think that's exactly right. But the example was not intended to be pitting against.
Thank you. I appreciate that amplification.
Thank you. And I will relook at that to make sure that I don't mislead anyone with that.
Thank you. Director Whitmore.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not much to add, just a great refresher. It was needed because it seems like we started this process, Holly and Bill, 4 years ago, and it was not. Just so much has gone on since the phase one, if you will, of Reimagine. So great refresher, and I really appreciated fellow board members' comments in regard to the presentation and the overall project. Thank you.
Director Williams.
I have two questions that I kind of run together. The first one is I'm wondering how we are now planning to have Reimagine interact with the Accountability Committee. I know that some people on the Accountability Committee are also part of Reimagine. And so I wonder if you all would speak to that, and then I'll go on to my second question.
So I'll take that question, Director Williams. Considering Reimagine is an important element as it relates to our service in and of itself, we will keep people apprised of our meetings that we're holding, but these are two entities that I would look at being on parallel tracks, no pun intended. And so we will share information and have informed decisions due to the fact that we leveraged Reimagine RTD when we had to quickly pivot and be flexible and agile as we looked at our service delivery model going forward. So recognizing that we want to hear from a varied audience as relates to what might be best relative to our service optimization planning, that we would take that in a multi-pronged approach going forward and get feedback and share information accordingly. And we're more than happy to provide updates at the Accountability Committee, because this just provides another avenue in which we can disseminate information about what we're doing, trying to optimize service here within the region.
That's great. Thank you for that. That's great. The other question I had is, it's been close to a year since we had Reimagine, the technical working group or the advisory council. And I know that some of the people who were on either one or both of those have left town, changed jobs. I wonder if we are going to ask those people to continue in their position, or if their replacement in their position would be invited, or how we're dealing with that. Have we thought about that?
Go ahead and take that, Holly Buck, FHU. So we have, you're absolutely right, there has been some turnover, certainly. So what we've done is we've gone through both the lists. When we've flagged someone who has changed jobs, we have looked to Bill Saroy and Brian Welch to help us make sure that we're getting a full, if we know somebody's not there, making sure we're getting a replacement, reaching out to that organization. And we've had some pretty good success so far, but there are still a couple of spaces where we're looking to shore that up and make sure there's still conversation going on.
Super, thank you. That's all, appreciate it.
Any questions? I believe our chair has joined us.
Hey, everybody. I do. Holly, thank you for teeing that up, and thank you, Director Williams, for asking that question, because one of the things that I'm thinking about is 4 years ago, people talked about diversity, but they didn't talk about diversity like we are talking about it today. And diversity is so complex. When you look at the 6 components that you have on page 86, it shows just how diverse it is currently. Here's my question, is those 2 seats that are left, could they actually be filled by someone who could be on that committee and say, this is exactly what's happened to me writing RTD, so that they would be transit writers? And I would love one of them to be a youth, because I think that their voice is so important as we move forward in reimagining RTD, number 1. And perhaps the second one should be someone from the senior community who depends on RTD to get from one place to another. In terms of really showing diversity and inclusion, I think that would be really successful for us as an agency to show that we have them at the table. And I think the question really needs to be specific. What is it about RTD that concerns you? Not what you've heard, not what you've read, not what you assume, but what is it your experience been? Thank you, Madam Chair.
You are welcome. You know, I would follow up on Chair Rivera Malpietti's questions there and suggestions. And I apologize if some of this is in the planning. I heard some of what you're doing, but there are a couple of polls that might make sense. One of them is along the lines of what the chair was talking about, but sort of generally, and you were talking about looking at the Dr. Cog materials. Will we doing any rider polling of our customers, our former customers, our potential customers? You know, Director Davidson and I met with the Superior Town Council last night, and several people said, I used to take the Flatiron Flyer every day, but my company has closed its office, or I'm only going to be going back to work 1 day a week. So will we be doing any of that polling?
You know what? I don't want to make any promises here, but what we're doing right now is putting together our updated public engagement plan for this second phase of Reimagine.
It's Tuesday.
Sorry,
I forgot.
Director Williams, I think you're unmuted.
Sorry, Holly Buck, FHU. So we are, I think, you know, we did some polling, we did some surveying during the system optimization process. And I think there's an opportunity to do, some really great outreach as part of this as well. So let me put a plan together and we'll definitely bring that to you with some more details. And I think there's some opportunity for that as well.
Great. And one is more of an internal poll with the Reimagine Advisory Committee. It sounds like some people are going off, some people are continuing, but, you know, I think that, you know, once you introduce sort of the change of focus, I know you'll be talking to them a lot, but just kind of some sense of what they felt like worked before and didn't work before, and you know, how they would build on what they liked in the past, I think is also worth considering.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Let's see. Anything else? I guess that's all we have on that for tonight. Thank you so much, Mr. Van Meter and Ms. Buck. And does anyone else have any other old business?
Madam Chair, this is Director
Bob Broom? Director Broom?
Thank you. I have a question. Last week, the power grid in Texas went down. If a similar event were to occur in Colorado, what redundancies do we have built into our systems to deal with this? In other words, do we have backup generators to maintain our communication systems and security systems? Even simple things like, do we have backup to pump diesel fuel into buses, so at least you can keep buses moving to go out and retrieve people who might get stuck somewhere when the grid went down? And while I doubt if it's going to be weather related, it could very well be some computer hacks get in and shut down the grid in Colorado. I would like to get a report back from staff. Let's kind of remind the board where we stand in this regard. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, is that
Yes,
something
if I heard Director Broom, basically he wants to know about our COOP, our Continuity of Operations Plan. That's what I would qualify it as such. And so we can work to bring something back as it relates to that.
I think you're breaking up.
You can't, am I being heard?
I can hear you.
All right, thank you very much. I was stating that we will bring back what our plans are relative to a continuity of operations plan going forward. And then basically talk about the elements that Director Broom put forward, how we can, continue on. One thing for certain, in my experience in the transit space, quite naturally, I'm sure we've leveraged here in Colorado as well. Various partnerships we have in the midst of a catastrophic event, emergency management relations and things of the like. So we will work in order to bring something back to the board to address that inquiry that has been posed. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone else, other old business, or we'll move to new business? Does anyone have new business? Any new business to discuss? I see Director Lewis.
I have two. Two things that I'd like to discuss. The first is just a request of the staff. I know we changed our we moved to live streaming, which I'm really excited about, and we moved to Zoom, but there isn't on the agenda specific directions on how you might be able to access public comment. And so my ask is that we could be more explicit on how we let the public know that we have changes, because we, I think, know this stuff pretty well. We're here every Tuesday. And sometimes the public doesn't know that. So that's the first one. I know I spoke with Barbara earlier this morning, and she informed me that there was some communication that went out, some today and some previously, to let folks know that we would be changing. And I would encourage us to put maybe some of that communication on our social media accounts as well, just to reach a broader audience, as well as the email list servers that we have. That'd be a great opportunity for us to get the word out. And it's more of a focus on the specific directions on how to actually access the meeting, because folks don't always know. So that's my first one. You all can respond. You can also deal with it internally. I don't I don't have a preference on how you do that. And then I had a second comment, if that's all right.
Is there a response? Those are good.
Director Lewis, if I may, and I'm sorry, Madam Chair, if I may respond.
That'd be
We
great.
will ensure that we leverage all conduits so people do have an understanding. As I said earlier, we're conducting the people's business, and we want to ensure that there is meaningful engagement. So working with our communications team as well as the board office, we will leverage all possible conduits going forward. So thank you very much for bringing that up in this forum.
Thank you so much, General Manager. I really appreciate it. And then the second is I wanted to share a story that I received from a constituent about one of our operators, which I was really pleased to hear. You all know that I was a teen mom, so I used to take the bus pretty regularly from Montbello, actually, into 5 Points to drop them off to daycare and then off to college. And one of the things that I remember pretty fondly is my bus operator, because he would always wait for me. And would be really, really kind. I had a 3-year-old, and 3-year-olds aren't always the best riders or customers, General Manager Johnson. And so this particular story was about a woman in Boulder, actually, Director Geisinger, which might be interesting to you, who utilizes our services pretty regularly to go snowshoeing. And she hadn't showed up for her ride, and actually had gotten lost. It was eventually rescued, but one of the operators put in the comments on social media that who was the operator for this woman. Hey, I'll leave her name out. RTD driver here, just wanted to say that all of us Boulder operators that get the pleasure of driving Jen were on edge throughout the day thinking about her. Glad to hear she was found today. It was truly a relief to all of us. hope she has a speed recovery and we get to see her again soon. And that was just such a beautiful story for me because I use public transportation, but also that is like the epitome of the folks who operate our services, who genuinely care about the people beyond just dropping them off from stop to stop, but how they are doing in their well-being. And so I just say kudos to our operators. This is a reminder of the kindness and the compassion and the empathy and the patience, quite honestly, that they exhibit on a day-to-day basis.
That's a great story. Thank you. I was glad to see that she was rescued too, and I hadn't heard that story. So, a good story. Any other business? Anyone else? Did I see someone's hand go up before? Oh yeah, Director. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, thank you everyone for. Especially Director Lewis bringing this up about transparency and our board meetings being more accessible. I just would want to add on, if possible, if we could share out our YouTube link whenever possible, because I know some folks don't have access to Zoom, and it might be a lot easier for people just to watch and listen on. So that would just be my one comment. And I would also want to say a thank you for those who have made it more accessible by providing that YouTube link. It has been great. And I've heard from constituents how much easier it is to provide that. And also going off of Director Lewis, a shout out to our operators because they're doing an amazing job right now during very uncertain times. And that's all I'd have to say. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Anything else? All right. Seeing no additional business, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Rivera Malpiedi.
Second. Anybody?
Second, Director Williams.
All right. Rivera Malpiedi is moving. Director Williams is the second. Any objection?
Just real quick, I thought I saw Director Deschelle's hand up. I just want to make sure he had that chance to say something.
Do you have something, Director
Thank
Deschelle?
you. Yeah, thank you, Director Rosenthal. I just wanted to really quickly, I know we skipped the Pledge of Allegiance today, which is something I'm completely fine with, but if anyone else is interested in evaluating what it means to do a land acknowledgement for the native lands our district occupies, please feel free to reach out. Something I'm certainly interested in, whether that's in lieu of or in addition to the pledge. And if all of what I just said sounds like gibberish, also please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to discuss. And if anyone has any connections to individuals in the Native community who you think we should, or Indigenous population who you think we should include in this conversation, please let me know.
Great. Thank you. All right. We had a motion to adjourn that passed. The meeting is adjourned at 6:48 p.m. Let's take a short break. Come back and shall we do 7 minutes? Come back at 6:55. Does that work?
Yep.
Really stay in this Zoom, okay? 6:55. Thanks so much.
Good evening, Mr. Ford.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good.
I can hear you.
Okay.
It's Tuesday. I informed the entire RTD district of the fact that it was Tuesday a few minutes ago.
There you go.
And we forgot to thank you for that.
Yeah, my family.
Right. It is 6:55 p.m. I will now call to order Tuesday, February 23rd, the RTD Special Board Meeting to order. We are convened as of 6:55 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Again, I would respectfully ask everyone to remain muted unless you are recognized to speak. The roll was called during the board meeting, and I will note for the record, though, that we do still have a quorum. We have one lone recommended action this evening before us, and that is why we are having this special board meeting. If you recall last week, this item was not quite yet ready for action during our committee meeting. So, considering the timing of the proposed extension, it is appropriate and necessary for this item to come before the board at this time. And it is the collective bargaining agreement extension. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve Tisdale.
Second, Williams.
Thank you. I have a movement of Director Tisdale and a second of Director Williams. As a second. At this time, I'm going to ask those directors or staff members who wish to speak to raise your virtual hands, and I will call on you in turn. For directors or staff calling into the meeting, if you wish to speak, please remember to press *9, and you can toggle your mute settings by pressing *6. All right. I would like to go ahead and turn this, well, let's do this. I need to do a roll call vote. If you will all unmute your phones, I would like to do in alphabetical order to move forwards for discussion. Director Bouquet.
Yes.
Director Broom.
Madam Chair, point of order, are we voting on the motion for the extension, or is there going to be staff discussion?
There will be staff discussion. This is just to move forward for discussion.
Okay.
Got it? Yeah. So we'll do the vote to go into session, and then we'll have the staff report. Got it? General Counsel.
Hi there, Madam Chair, Melanie Snyder, General Counsel. So we're not going to be going into executive session for this discussion tonight. I think Michael Ford was planning to do the staff presentation, and then it may make sense to turn over to the directors for discussion.
Okay, got it. So with that, we can go ahead into the staff discussion, correct?
Yes, let's have the staff presentation on this.
Okay, well, with that, let's go into the staff discussion. I'm going to turn this over to our general manager.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It is my pleasure to introduce Michael Ford, who has been working very diligently in conjunction with our union partners as it relates to this collective bargaining agreement. So I would like to yield the floor to Mr. Ford for him to introduce this item. And I'd like to publicly thank him along with our partners at the Amalgamated Transit Union for coming full circle and having the opportunity for us to be before you today to put forward this extension for your consideration. With that, Mr. Ford, please
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's Michael Ford, COO. This is to move forward a recommendation action authorizing the general manager and CEO, Deborah A. Johnson, to execute a one-year extension of the collective bargaining agreement, the CBA, by and between the Regional Transportation District, RTD, and the Amalgamated Transit Union 1001 ATU, effective March 1st, 2021 through February 28th, 2022. By way of background, during these unprecedented setting times and challenges due to COVID-19, staff has been working with the ATU to address the process for which negotiations would be conducted prior to the expiration of the current CBA, which expires February 28th, 2021. As part of the discussions, there's a lot of uncertainty of RTD's current financial, economic, and COVID-related circumstances. It was mutually agreed between the ATU and RTD, and out of abundance of caution, we wanted to extend the contract, the CBA, for 1 year period. RTD is committed to working cooperatively and collaborating with the ATU to enhance quality of life, conditions, listening, responding, and providing service offerings that best meet employees, customers, stakeholders, and constituents. Last week, we found out from the ATU, February 17th, that the RTD received notification that the tentative agreement was passed by the ATU, by their members, to extend the current CBA from March 1st, 2021 to February 28th, 2022. Those provisions included continuation of funding the pension at $6.2 million for the year, one-time lump sum net payment of $500 per ATU employee, a continuation of longevity benefits and progression of said employee. Not all employees would get this, but they would get some kind of stipend for the time and longevity they stayed in their position. And lastly, 1%, no percent wage increase for this contract was also included in the agreement. So these are the elements that were part of the 1 year extension, and we're looking for your authorization tonight to approve it. And thank you, and I'm happy to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Director Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Ford, for undergoing those negotiations, and GM Johnson and the entire team. I think that's excellent to hear that we will be having that extension. I'm curious with the discussions with 1001, did they bring anything to the table to say, okay, well, you know, we won't ask for an increase this year, but in 2022, this is something that we're looking for. You know, is there anything that they brought to the table kind of like that, or was it just pretty much just dedicated to this year? Thank you.
This is Michael Ford, COO. I think the issue was we were uncertain about what the conditions would be. It was best to wait and see how conditions unfolded. No real substantive discussions were had about wages at this point because there was a lot of uncertainty, and we felt it was best to wait until we could see a little bit more clearer what the situation was going to be going forward.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question, Director Rosenthal?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Catlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to point out that the article I read in today's clips, or I don't remember what media it was, in quoting Mr. Lance Longenbottom, I just thought that there was definitely a spirit of understanding of RTD's situation right now, that there wasn't a tendency to dig in their heels, and that they really were trying to work with the agency in a spirit of cooperation. And when I read that, I was very, very pleased. They really did seem to want to come to the table and recognized our plight and wanted to be a partner in this going forward. So I think this is a really good move to approve this extension and then let Mr. Ford and Ms. Johnson work their magic in the ensuing year. So thank you very much, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, if I may, Madam Chair, if I may address Director Catlin.
Please, General Manager.
I want to say thank you very much, Director Catlin, for that observation and sharing that. I do know that Mr. Ford, as well as other members of the team, and I can speak personally for myself, have been working with the union, and we have been communicating, and both entities look forward to what lies ahead. We recognize that we need to enhance our communication, and there's a willingness on both sides. So I appreciate the acknowledgement from this body in relationship to that. Because basically the ultimate goal that we have here is moving people, and that doesn't differ from ATU nor RTD. That's commonality. And I have to say this is very corny, but you can't spell union without U and I. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now I'm going to go through. I see no other hands up from any other board members. I'm going to look one more time. Okay, I see none. So now
My hand is up.
I'm sorry?
My hand is up.
Oh, go ahead, Director Lewis.
Yeah, I had two questions. Two questions and a comment. The first question is about the money that we received from the federal government, and I wanted to know if any of those funds if we would have any of those funds available after 2021. Excuse me.
So if I may take that question, Madam Chair, and address Director Lewis, as I referenced in my general manager's report, when we were talking about the revenue roll-up, considering the CRISA money is specifically for transit operations, when we came before this body in early February, Mr. McLeod, acting CFO, and we talked about the 6 service changes or run boards as they're qualified here at this agency going forward. We're ensuring that we have monies allocated for our full roll-up for revenue service due to the fact that we don't want to play with people's lives relative to not knowing what lies ahead. So when we look at the overarching cost to deliver revenue service, that's all encompassed, not just for operators, but we're talking about for mechanics, for people that working in dispatch, for, you know, rail laborers, all of that is encompassed in that element. And so that's how we're apportioning that money going forward, so we can ensure that we can maintain the level of service, at least what we know it to be today, for the tomorrows to come within the time frame within 2022 to cover those 6 service changes or run boards.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. The second comment that I had, this will be maybe new for you, General Manager Johnson, but not new, or maybe new to some of my colleagues here. One of the things that I hope we are able to do in the future is to provide some hazard pay or operator pay for our frontline staff. We've talked about it, we as in me, when I'm talking to myself, maybe quite a bit. And so I'd love the opportunity for us to discuss that in real terms and to figure out what that might look like.
Thank you very much for that comment. I appreciate it and do have some experience with that. So look forward to what lies ahead and having discussions with Mr. Ford and what we may do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, now I see no other hands. Going once, going twice? Okay, here we go. So with all of that information, I did get a movement of Director Tisdale and a second of Director Williams. Are you two still okay with that?
Yes.
Director Tisdale?
Yes, sorry, my cursor was on the other screen as I was reading the agenda. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So with that, I'm going to do the roll call for the vote on the extension. Director Bouquet?
Yes.
Director Broom?
Yes.
Secretary Busick?
Yes.
Director Catlin?
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Cook?
Yes.
Director Davidson?
Yes.
Director Deschelle?
Yes.
First Vice Chair Geisinger?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Rosenthal?
Yes.
Director Sloan?
Yes.
Director Tisdale is a yes.
Yes.
Director Whitmore?
Yes.
Director Williams,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So 15 yes moves unanimously. Thank you. Okay, there is one discussion item this evening, which is the discussion item regarding the commuter rail. And again, I'm going to ask our CEO and General Manager, Deborah Johnson, to lead this discussion. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and appreciate the opportunity to have this discussion with you all this evening. Recognizing that we have had some particularly hard pain points as relates to our commuter rail operations as of yet, and you've heard me say ad nauseum, that's important to be empathetic and understand those pain points. We thought it appropriate here to have a dialogue about where we are and what we're doing and how we're going to create a path forward in reference to mitigating aspects while ensuring that we are operating a safe transit mode. And so with that as a backdrop, I'm going to yield the floor to Michael Ford, and he and his team will lead the discussion to bring everybody up to speed on what's been happening on our commuter rail lines, and then more so share with you all our intent to have some virtual listening sessions with our customers and residents that reside along those rail lines that have had some impacts as of late in reference to our quiet zones or lack thereof. So with that, Mr. Ford, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. You can put up the presentation. We'll get started. Okay, you can advance it. Thank you, John. So what I wanted to talk about is an overview of our commuter rail operations. Just to give some context, we have 4 lines, the A, B, G, and N, utilizing the same vehicles, systems, and infrastructure components. The Hyundai Rotem EMU commuter rail cars are part of that. The train management dispatch system, also known as the TMDS, supported by Wabtec. The positive train control, known as PTC, and then the inoperable electronic train management system, which is also supported by Wabtec. Transaction power management systems, the TPMS, also supported by Wabtec. And then some of the other things that are rounded out, the 25 kVA overhead contact system, better known as the OCS, electric power, the high-level boarding platforms to meet ADA compliance, wireless and conventional crossing technology, and the quiet zones. So you can advance that. Thank you. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to do is to give you a little bit of an overview of RTD, the inline railroad responsibilities, maintained, operated, and dispatched by RTD's operations team. The responsibilities include dispatch inline operations from Park Avenue, Wewata overpass bridge to 124th station, inspection and maintenance of all rail infrastructure, and cleaning of our vehicles, contract, coordinate with suppliers of the TMDS, and the positive train control performance for the inline. So this kind of runs out our responsibilities for the inline. Next slide, please. Our partners with DTO-DP railroad responsibilities include or encompass the A, B, and G lines, and they are maintained, operated, and dispatched by Denver Transit Partner operators. And those responsibilities include inspections of the maintenance of the all rail infrastructure, dispatching including inline and Amtrak in Denver Union Station, known as the DUS territories. There are 66 commuter rail cars that are involved, and commuter rail maintenance facilities, better known as the CRMF. Next slide. And then we have our suppliers, and their responsibilities through Wabtec include freight and passenger supplier vendor, positive train control and operable electronic train management systems, train management dispatch systems, and traction power management systems. Next slide. So a lot of questions have come up about what are quiet zones. And I want to just take a little moment to kind of go through this because there are, issues that come up from time to time about this. And it's regularly rules allowing for no horn use by train operators under normal operating conditions. So we really don't want to have to use them, but there are exceptions. If our positive train control on the train doesn't initiate or drops during the trip, the FRA requires the train operator to sound horns at crossings or adhere to the requirements spelled out in FRA 49 CFR 222.23. So we have to adhere to that. And there are other exceptions that we also have to be noteworthy about. Any other provision of this part, a locomotive engineer must sound the locomotive horn to provide a warning to animals, vehicle operators, pedestrian trespassers, or crews on other trains in emergency situations. If in the locomotive engineer's sole judgment, such action is appropriate in order to prevent imminent injury, death, or property damage. And one other caveat I'd like to point out is when active grade crossing warning devices have malfunctioned and the use of the horn is required by specific sections of this chapter. So again, I just wanted to take some time to emphasize why we have to use horns when we prefer not to, but there are exceptions to that rule and we have to exercise that when these conditions arise. Next slide, please. What I wanted to also do is provide some overall metrics of our performance, the inline performance. And I took November, December, and January. Service reliability or availability was at 100%, meaning that we had vehicles available. Our on-time performance was about 83.5% for November. December rounded out at 93.2 for service availability with an on-time performance of 83.6. In January, our service availability was at 96.2 and a on-time performance of 88.1. I just bring this up despite some of the things that we've had happen, our on-time performance has been relatively good and our service availability. We can always do better, but I wanted to give some context to that. Next slide. The Eagle project, which also incorporates A, B, and G lines, are performed by our DTO, DTP. November, you see 95% service availability with 90% on-time performance. December, 97.3, on-time performance at 96.7. And then in January, our service availability was at 98.6 with an on-time performance of 96.5. Next slide. So we have got current challenges, no secret. And over the course of December, January, and part of February, we've had December for the inline 17 days with some issues. January had 10 days. And as of February 14th, as the last date we marked for February, were 2 days of issues. On the Eagle line, you can see 9 days of issues for December, 6 days on January, and as of the 14th of February, 5 days with issues. So improvements and opportunities. We take these concerns very seriously. And with our positive train control and our TMDS functionality, we've identified root causes and do the analysis to resolve the problem. So I want to emphasize that again. We really want to get to the gnat's eyebrow of the concern to make sure that we are understanding the issues, doing the analysis to resolve the issues. We've also worked to develop supplier operation agreements to have readiness and availability of resources so they can respond quickly. The other thing that we've really worked towards is RTD and DTO, DTP, and WABTEC, our interface, to enhance ongoing communications, challenges, establishing protocols, establishing check and balances to ensure that we know what's going on and we can make sure that we have SOPs and other things in place to ensure that we learn from our mistakes, know what we can do to expedite issues, and more importantly, mitigate the issues so they don't come back. The other thing that we focus on is infrastructure performance, continued quality control assurances to make sure that we audit for what we know we need to look at and make sure that we do the necessary training to help us move forward. Next slide, please. So more recently, we met with Wabtec executives and staff on February 12th to work towards positive resolution. They are currently on site responding to issues that have arisen, and we're working very well to ensure a maintenance agreement is expedited to help with response times and to mitigate future issues. So this is currently happening right now. Again, we will continue to meet, work through issues to minimize these problems. Again, getting at the root causes so we don't have these continued escalations. Next slide. So one of the major focuses, obviously, with our stakeholders, our customers, our constituents, is to ensure that we have virtual quiet zone and making sure that we communicate. We use, various ways of communicating through our emails, through our rider alerts, but also we want to be out where the people are. So A-line, there will be some discussions on Wednesday, March 3rd, noon to 1 p.m. The B and G lines on Thursday, March 4th, noon to 1 p.m. And then the N line, March 5th from noon to 1, to go over to educate our public and to give them some understanding and reassurance that we're doing everything we can to mitigate these issues and concerns. And I think we'll continue to monitor this, but I just wanted to provide some context to the concerns that have happened over the last couple of months so that you know that we're handling this. We feel confident about the relationships between our folks with Wabtec and also DTO, DTP, and we're really working together to minimize these issues when they arise. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from board members? Oh, hold on. Director Cook.
Yeah, thank you so much. I can't find my hand sometimes. I think it matters if you've got full screen enabled or not. So thank you all, first of all, for this really good presentation and some data, the work that you're doing and so forth. I really appreciate that. And congratulations too on the improvement in the N line. I remember when the A or the G line was getting going, there was just a few months where they kind of had to work out the routine and so forth. So thanks for that. I'm going to talk about the G line specifically. First of all, I think Doug Allen's listening in. I just want to say that you could see in the statistics that we had great availability, the on-time performance is there, the vehicles are clean, and the operators and the TSO personnel, they're always helpful and really on point on things. So I just wanted to start with that really good stuff. The thing that we have, the only thing that we have is the train horn noise. And so thank you for the recognition and the willingness to work on that. I want to give a little bit of I want to focus on one piece of it if I can. First of all, you highlighted it, but in my experience, the vast majority of the train horns are when the PTC is not activated. So thank you for that. When people don't know that, they're inclined to kind of blame the operator, assuming that the operator is exerting their discretion at dark early in the morning to ring those horns. The span I'm talking about is mainly from Lowell Boulevard all the way west to the end of line. And the thing I want to focus on is the trains going out for the first time in the morning. It takes 3 trains to get into service. To run that half-hourly service, it takes 3 trains in service. And it's sometimes the case. It's not terribly unusual for those trains to come out west without PTC activated for whatever reason. That's the case because you can hear them ring the bells, or excuse me, sound the horns at every single intersection. Between the Old Town Arvada and the Arvada Ridge station, there are 6 at-grade crossings. And anybody in that stretch can pretty much hear the trains at every one, 2 long, 1 short, 1 long. They're at about 105 decibels. They go through, they barely finish with one and they start the next one. So the thing I'd like to focus on and just make sure that it's something that you, Michael Ford and Dave Jensen and so forth are looking at is that very first train coming through, because sometimes yesterday was a case at 3:45 a.m. the train came out and initialized at Ward Road, no problems for the rest of the day. Sometimes it's one train, sometimes it's all 3 getting into service. They just come out without being initialized. And so if you can focus on that early morning before we're in service, getting them out there, that would just do tremendous things for the people along the corridor who, you know, they're hearing at 3:45 in the morning, some of them 60 or 100 feet from their bedroom windows, that train going through 2 long, 1 short, 1 long, 2 long, 1 short, 1 long, and so forth. So if you can just really focus on that piece, I can't tell you what an improvement that would make in the quality of life for people along the corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, Second Vice Chair. Director Whitmore.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Michael, thank you for the presentation. I think it's good to have this reminder on technologies and the alphabet soup of acronyms. It helps us as we go out and meet with our constituents as well. And we've got some meetings coming up later in the week where these discussions would happen. I know this is probably an unfair question for you or for Dave Jensen, but on the end line, we've got this hopeful trend in February going with only 2 issues. Do you think we are moving past some of the newness and some of the situations with the end line being unique in that it's operated by us and not our contractor? You have a sense for that? And I, you know, I guess I'm putting you on the spot, so you don't have to answer that if you don't feel like you would like to, but if Ms. Johnson or Mr. Jensen would like to chime in, that'd be great. And that's the only question I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. General Manager?
Yes, really, if I'll have the team speak to this, recognizing that we are working through some challenges as you bring any system, you know, into the main line, recognizing this had just come forward in September, recognizing the technologies and the sharing of the tracks and all these other aspects that come into play. I think we'd be remiss to opine at this juncture whether or not we anticipated getting better, but I think the path forward, as the team has outlined, is going to put us on the right track, no pun intended. But with that, I will yield the floor to Mr. Jensen and Mr. Ford to address more appropriately.
Thank you.
Yes, and I'll turn it over to Dave, but I just would say that obviously this is a new line. We have this Michael Ford, COO, new line. There are some new operators on the line as well. So the training along with some of the technology creates some of the issue. I think we're getting better. We're improving. We're continuing to be diligent about that. With that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Jensen if he has any comments to further.
Chair, if I may, this is Dave Jensen.
Please.
So Director Whitmore, there's really not much more for me to add than what's already been said. I would say that I heard your question is not necessarily have we turned the corner yet, but are we seeing improvements? And so there's really 2 elements that we're evaluating. One is the operational element. And I think clearly we're seeing improvement and clearly we're learning, and we can expect that to continue. From an operational standpoint, one of the things that we'll probably have to continue with for a while is our operating staff. So we've got a train operator class in session right now. We're hiring for another train operator class shortly. So when that group comes out, they'll have that same learning curve. And the efforts on our part will be to make sure that they're not all out at the same time once they qualify, and so that we can provide the best service possible. And the controllers are doing better, and the maintenance staff is we're learning that system better. So yes, we're moving in the right direction there. The other issue really is the issue at hand, and that's the technology. I can't. I'm reluctant to say yes, we've turned the corner on that. What I am willing to say, though, is that WebTech has been very responsive, as is evidenced by them being on site now. When we had our meeting with them, their staff indicated that they would make this the highest priority, and every indication to this point is that they have. And if I could add one more thing maybe to that, it's really the behind the scenes work that's going on. I've got 2 staff members I asked to join us this evening, and I don't know that they'll have an opportunity to speak, but I know that they're working with WebTech. They're working, if not daily, for sure weekly, usually 2 times a week. And so they're in constant communication, and we have our staff, which is learning the PTC element as well and trying to identify where these problems are. Like Director Cook mentioned, that first train in the morning on the G line, as soon as we can start identifying certain trains, certain times, certain locations, certain things, we can help them start pin down what some of those issues might be. So we're working diligently on it. We expect there to be improvement. We are seeing responsiveness from the contractor or from the vendor on that. So I think things are looking forward, but I wouldn't say we're out of the woods yet.
Well, and I think that there is some realization with the customers that use the inline of the newness of the line, and sometimes you do have to work the kinks out. I appreciate your input on WebTech. That was probably going to be one of Vince's questions that's upcoming, and that's good to hear. I do want to say I really appreciate the communications that has been amped up for those of us up north when we do have like a 2 or 3 day problem in a row. Dave and Michael have been great about that, and we appreciate that. But on that note, and Vince maybe has a little more of an input from constituents, because I'm a little further removed from where I live to the inline, but I have not received a plethora of complaints. I've got a few, but it's not been overwhelming by any means, which maybe is an indication of the patience of our riders on that line. So, but thank you for helping with the communications, and I'll yield my time to my neighboring board member, I think, who's next in line, Madam Chair.
Yes, he is. Secretary Busick, you have the floor, sir.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I want to start by thanking Mr. Ford and Mr. Jensen for meeting with Director Whitmore and I to talk about some of these issues as they were cropping up. We had a period there with the N line where we had 3 days in a row of bus bridges, and boy, oh boy, there's nothing that kills people's enthusiasm and something like that. And I've had a number of complaints, not a significant amount, but the complaints I've had are disheartening, in that people are saying, I was excited about the N line. I stopped taking the 120X bus downtown and taking the N line. I'm going back to the bus. So, that's hard to hear. And it always seems when WebTech upgrades their software, problems happen. And it's happened on the Eagle line for years. They seem to be the weak link in the system. And I just can't get how, for all these years, it's still an issue. That's just a comment. I don't need a response. But at online performance of the N line, I'll have to take exception with Mr. Ford. It's pretty poor compared to Eagle, and that's one of the problems that people keep calling me about. You drop 1 run, okay. You drop 2 runs, now you're waiting an hour for your next train, and it really becomes unreliable. I would love to see, and as Director Cook alluded to, the issue with the horns. It's really a problem for people. And you can subscribe to rider alerts on RTD, and if there's a problem, a late train or a drop run or whatever it is, you'll get a rider alert that says that's happening. And information is good, I think. And I would love to see rider alerts that say PTC is down, horns will sound. People can see that. People along the corridor can subscribe and see, oh, that's why the horns are sounding. It's the PTC system, or whatever that means, whatever it means. Something's going on, and we're working on it. So I think getting information out there on a rider alert system, if it's possible, I'd love to see that. Now, does RTD contract directly with WebTech for its services on the N line, or do we have some kind of relationship through DTO by which we use WebTech? Does anyone know?
Chair, if I may, this is Dave Jensen.
Please.
We do not have to go through DTO. WebTech comes
Okay.
to us.
Okay, good. That's good. And I'm glad to hear they're being responsive, and hopefully they'll continue to do so, and we'll keep working these kinks out. And my final comment will be on the listening sessions that are coming up, and I want to ensure that we are publicizing these broadly and widely in every manner we possibly can to get the word out that people can get involved in this. So other than that, I'll yield the floor to the next speaker. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I see no other board members for a comment or question.
I see Director Lewis.
All right, Director Lewis.
Thank you, Director Bouquet. I really appreciate that.
I don't know why I'm not seeing your hand, Director Lewis, at all. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a few comments and a few questions, and it's specific to the University of Colorado A-line. This is probably not surprising, but since I've been on the board, this has been an ongoing concern that I've heard from a number of constituents, specifically regarding the horns. And we've made commitments as an agency that we would proactively communicate to our constituents when the horns might sound, understanding that we might not know in advance, but if those horns were going to sound for a long period of time, then we would put that information out. And unfortunately, we haven't done that. And so the constituencies along the University of Colorado A-line in that corridor have been really, really frustrated with RTD and have lost faith in RTD and our ability to move forward and to rectify this issue. And so that's the first. I would really, we've had lots of conversations. I know we're having these stakeholder meetings, but I would really like to have a plan that I know that I can communicate out to my constituents and that they can count on when the train horns are going to sound for an extended amount of time, because that keeps popping up and we're not adhering to that. Like Director Cook, what we hear most often is the horns are sounding in Central Park and also sounding at the Dahlia station or Dahlia crossing. And so, I think that's good information for us to have. I actually don't live too close to the trains, but I can hear them and I'm aware of them because I know that I'm going to get a slew of emails and phone calls from constituents when I hear them because they get pretty frustrated. I think one of the things that I've asked of staff is if we can put forth, where it is that we're going, where it is that we've been, and where it is that we are now. And that, I think that would be really helpful because folks don't know. I know you all give and I said we should go out to our communities and say, hey, quiet zones aren't really quiet, right? And here are some circumstances in which quiet zones might not be quiet. And I think people can accept that pretty generally unless we aren't able to communicate that information out proactively and they're just hearing horns blare for a prolonged amount of time. I have a lot to say on this topic because this is probably the concern that I hear most often from my constituents. The emails that I get most often, the phone calls, the text messages are always often about the horns. And I would really like us to put a plan forward that folks along these corridors can really believe in and start to believe in RTD again and our ability to operate this system in the way in which we told them we would.
Madam Chair.
Please.
Yes, it's Michael Ford, COO. I'm hearing you loud and clear. I think we can take a lot of the information you provided tonight and the concerns that other board members have expressed and really see what we can do to help improve the communication. Obviously reduce the train horns, but there are circumstances where they are going to sound because of other extenuating circumstances. But I think this has given us some good insight to the concerns that you're raising and others. And I think we can come back with a more robust plan and an enhanced communication opportunity to our customers, constituents, and stakeholders. So I'm happy to share that in upcoming board meetings on what changes we've been able to make.
Thank you so much, Michael, Mr. Ford. I really appreciate that. And I do think that it's really about the communication. At the constituents that I've talked to at least have understood that the train horns will blow from time to time. And that could be for a myriad of reasons, as you pointed out in our presentation. But I think it's when it's the prolonged and there's no explanation of any sort of when it begins, when it's going to end, how long it's going to happen. And I empathize with that. And so I really appreciate this presentation. I appreciate your work on this. I appreciate that we're going to have public meetings. I just have one request is we do have one meeting that's happening between noon and 1. And I would just like us to see, I'd love as a director to see a little variety in that. So the noon to 1 hour might be convenient for some communities, and maybe the later hours in the evening might be better for other communities. And so just to offer that variety, as well as communication in other languages, at least Spanish at the very least. Thank you so much.
Are there all your questions, Director Lewis?
Yes.
Thank you. I see no one else in the queue. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment or a question? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you for that presentation, and thank you, directors, for those questions and those comments. We're now to other matters. Are there any other matters to come before the board this evening? Director Geisinger.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick report on the Accountability Committee. The committee is picking up speed, I would say, at this point, after taking some time to sort of organize early on. March 1 at 4 p.m., there will be a governance subcommittee that all of the committee members, all of the subcommittees are invited to attend. And they'll be looking, excuse me, at partnerships and talking about some of the partnerships. And they're also going to be looking at this idea of local service councils. You will find that of interest. I believe that we're setting a study session for the board on March 9th to discuss some of these issues. The Accountability Committee bill is still in drafting. We had hoped maybe to have it tonight for the special board meeting, but it's still in drafting. We don't yet know when it will be introduced. But once we have the language, once it's introduced, it will come back to the board. And I think that's all I have. If you have any comments, questions about it, feel free to contact Director Whitmore or me.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
Just a qualifying statement. The session on the 9th is basically for RTD, just in a general sense, to talk about what our path forward is with the road to recovery. So recognizing it's not specific to the Accountability Committee. So I just wanted to qualify that, Director Geisinger.
Thank you. Great.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other new business or to come before, other matters to come before the board? Okay. Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn this special board meeting. Do I hear a move-in?
So moved. Geisinger.
Second.
Is that Director Tisdale second? Or Whitmore?
Tisdale got it, I think.
Okay. Any opposition to adjourning? All right, hearing none, I am calling the meeting 7:43 p.m. I want to thank you all for joining us. Stay safe and have a pleasant evening. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everybody.